Approximately 6 p.m. in the March 10th, 2022, Farragut Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting will now come to order. All Farragut Board of Mayor Alderman meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law. Our meetings can be seen on live Charter Channel 193 or TES Channel 3, as well as on the Farragut YouTube channel and also on our website. It will also be recorded and can be viewed later at Town of Farragut YouTube channel, as well as Charter Channel 193, TDS Channel 3. During the regular posted agenda, all comments or questions from Farragut residents will now be in person. If you are interested in speaking, we ask that you will fill out a blue card with your name and address and agenda number and turn it into the town recorder prior to the start of the meeting. And she's located right up here on my left. The mayor or the vice mayor shall maintain control of the meeting to provide a professional and objective environment, so please read the posted comment protocol that can be had at the front, and understand that there will be a 5-minute limit for each speaker. At the end of tonight's business meeting, there will be some time left in reserve for public comment under the Citizens Forum agenda, in which the same rules apply as the regular posted agenda items. Okay, we'll now start with tonight with a silent prayer, and be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll now ask the town recorder to please take a attendance roll call for the quorum.
Alderman Burnett.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Here.
Alderman Povlin. Here. Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams is here. Okay, do we have any agenda amendments?
No, sir.
None? Okay. I'll ask for a motion to approve, please.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Okay, motion, second. All in favor of approval, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show March 10th, 2022, agenda has been approved. Approval of minutes, are there any amendments to the minutes?
No, sir.
None?
Move for approval.
Are we just doing we're doing them separately,
We're
correct?
yes, we are. We'll start with February 10th.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show that February 10th, 2021 minutes have been approved and will be recorded as official minutes of that meeting. Next will be approval of the minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 special workshop.
Move for approval. Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Let the record show that the March 3rd, 2022 special workshop minutes have been approved as presented. Okay, start off with, on the mayor's report, again, I want to thank our two senators, Becky Massey and Rick Briggs, as well as our two House reps, Jason Zachary and Justin Lafferty, for their teamwork on the help that was put forth and to get the exit money in our governor's budget. Also, let everyone know that McPhee Park Phase 3 is now open, except for the Great Lawn, and it is purposely fenced until the contractor can go back and fix some of the drainage issues. Also, the brush has been cleared that goes out to the Red Mill Dam for someone that wants to walk it. It'd be a nice walk once the ground's dried out. Also, let's see, our Visit Farragut partner will be putting on a East Tennessee Bluegrass Association it'll be the inaugural Bluegrass Festival on the lawn. This will be at the Meyer Ralph McGill Plaza on March 26th from 3 to 6 p.m. This is a free event for this jam session. Any musician that wants to join in is more than welcome to attend, and just bring a chair and a blanket or whatever and join the fun. Also, Codes Officer Chris Brown's been named the new president of the East Tennessee Building Officials Association. Congratulations, Chris, on that. Parks and Rec Athletics Coordinator Lauren Cox is one of 30 parks and rec professionals across the United States that has been chosen to participate in the 2022 Altruism Institute in Boulder, Colorado. It's coming up this fall. This is a intensive 4-day program that will challenge the park and rec executives and policymakers to think differently about the important social and physical issues as they relate to the impact of public parks and recreation. Okay, let's see, next will be the Vice Mayor's report.
I have nothing tonight.
Okay, the other aldermen have anything to report?
No, sir.
If not, then we'll move on to our agenda items. We have 4 ordinances on tonight's agenda for review and public hearing. They will be on the first reading. Okay, you ready, Mark? Okay, start off will be Ordinance 22-02. It's an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code to create Appendix F, the Public Tree Care Ordinance. Town of Farragut will be the applicant.
Good evening. I'll be presenting these next, actually 4 ordinances. This first one, in discussion with the Planning Commission, we talked about, this is really the development of a public tree protection ordinance. And it's part of the goal of the town pursuing a Tree City USA recognition. There's 4 components that a Tree City has to demonstrate. They have to have a tree board. They have to have a tree care ordinance, and it's really specific to public trees on public properties, to demonstrate that they spend at least $2 per capita toward tree-related expenses, and then celebrate Arbor Day, which in Tennessee is the first Friday of March. As the town has grown, we've added a lot more tree cover to our public properties, we have realized that we can meet that financial requirement. That's always been kind of the challenge, the $2 per capita. I asked the Public Works Director to look at their costs, tree-related costs, and we can easily meet the $2 per capita now because of all the trees that we have at our parks and greenways and so forth. So this ordinance really is the more time-consuming thing that we needed to do in order to fulfill the requirements. This ordinance not only establishes some parameters for tree care for public property, but it establishes our tree board, who's on the tree board, what their duties would be, which would include facilitating an Arbor Day celebration. Just to kind of differentiate, unlike our landscaping requirements, which are administered by the Visual Resources Review Board, those deal with trees on private property for the most part. So the composition of our Tree City Board is mostly town staff that deals with public properties, like Public Works Directors, a Parks and Recreation Director, Planning Representative, Engineering. And then we also have an at-large member of either the Planning Commission or Board of Mayor and Alderman, and a citizen, ideally a citizen with some background in tree care. And then also a utility representative, because a lot of our public, particularly our rights-of-ways, we have utilities in those rights-of-ways, and I think it's very important to have somebody on that tree board that can give us their thoughts from their perspective as to whether what may be proposed in a certain location is a good idea, and if so, what would they suggest, and things like that, and just to think it through a little bit better so we don't end up with Bud having to go in a few years after trees have been planted and they just didn't have enough space, or a tree is planted under overhead utility lines and it was too large for that location. Trying to think those things through a little bit. So that's mostly what the tree ordinance accomplishes. When this was presented to the Planning Commission in February, they did unanimously recommend approval. of Ordinance 22-02. It's actually a separate appendix in the municipal code. That was kind of the best way I could think of putting it in there. So that's what we're proposing. And the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 22-02 on first reading.
I'm going to move to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, great. Do we have any resident questions on this?
Not on this one.
Okay. Discussion, and we'll start off with Alderman Meyer.
I think it's a great idea. I support it 100%.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Pinchot.
I agree. I support it.
Okay, Alderman Burnett.
I agree. No questions.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I've got nothing.
Do not have anything as well. And with that, I'll ask for Town Recorder to take a roll call vote, please.
Let me ask a question. Was the second from Scott? Did you second that?
I did.
I think Ron did,
Okay,
yes.
sorry. Okay.
I think for a
Okay,
second.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Alderman Pavlin,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Let the record show that ordinance 22-02 has been approved as presented on the first reading. Okay, next will be ordinance 22-03, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 3, Section 12, General Commercial, C1, subsection F9, height regulations to provide for a concept plan review when a building more than 2 stories in height is proposed. And again, this will be Town of Farragut applicant.
Yes, these next 3 ordinances actually were presented to you all for workshop discussion back in December, just to get your thoughts on what was being proposed. And for all 3 of them, you were supportive of what was being contemplated and asked the staff to go ahead and pursue that, which we have. This first one is dealing with the mixed-use town center portion of the general commercial zoning district. In that section, buildings can go up to 4 stories in height, and original intent of that was to allow for vertical mixed-use buildings like a true town center, and also to have language that was consistent with the town center zoning district that we have. The requested amendment really would just provide more review and approval control for when someone is proposing any building more than 2 stories in this location. And it would basically require them to submit a concept plan, which would, for them to outline where it's proposed, what its surrounding context is, what's the anticipated uses, what are the community objectives that might be achieved with the additional height. And then the Planning Commission would evaluate that, and that would have to be passed at the concept plan level before they could move on and submit a site plan. So it just gives an extra layer of review and evaluation to proposals that involve buildings greater than 2 stories. So this was also unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning Commission at their meeting in February. And the staff recommends approval of ordinance 22-03 on first reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Okay, Mark, do we have any resident questions on this one?
Not on this one.
Not on this one, okay. Discussions, and we'll start with Alderman Meyer. Pass. Alderman Burnett.
I don't think I have any questions at this point. I'll pass.
Okay, Alderman Pinchot.
I'm just glad to see us making this change, so I'm all for it.
Okay, Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I have none.
I don't have any as well on this. It's something that we've discussed at length already, so with discussion closed, I'll now ask the Town Recorder for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Alderman Pavlin,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that ordinance 22-03 has been approved as presented on the first reading. Okay, next will be ordinance 22-04, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 3, Section 13, Neighborhood Convenience Commercial, which we call NCC, to remove apartment buildings as a residential use and require a concept plan in association with a rezoning request to NCC. And again, this is Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, this one, when this was reviewed with the Planning Commission, staff gave a background of the evolution of this zoning district. It was kind of created as a transitional district, more of a scaled-down commercial district that would have smaller footprint buildings and a little bit more attention to being more neighborhood conscious with like lighting standards and dumpster placement and things like that. And another thing that this district provides for to kind of blend in that transitional component is that it does have the opportunity to have residential in this district, to mix that with non-residential. There's currently 2 properties that are zoned NCC. One of them's at the Swan Farm and the other one's down at the end of town at Watt Road. And then there's a third one that'll probably be coming to you all either the next time or the first meeting in April for another property that was recommended by the Planning Commission that's just south of the property on Watt Road that's already zoned neighborhood commercial. And all those have a mix of residential and non-residential. The residential component is attached single family in the 2 that have actual concept plans. So the idea here was to remove apartment buildings as one of the residential options and basically just have attached and detached single family as the option. And then also, since this district does allow for a mixture of residential and non-residential, to require a concept plan before a property is rezoned as part of a rezoning process, just like we do with the open space mixed residential now, so that you can get a feel for what the applicant is thinking about in terms of the composition of uses in their development and the nature of the residential and non-residential and how those interact on the property and to their surroundings. So basically this ordinance addresses both of those. It does take out apartments as a permitted use and establish a concept plan pretty similar to the one we created for the open space mixed residential a few months ago. And when this was presented to the Planning Commission in February, they did unanimously recommend approval, and the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 22-04 on first reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mark, do we have any resident questions on this one?
Not on this one, no.
Okay, thank you. We'll start out then on discussion with Alderman Burnett.
This time.
None at this time. Okay, Alderman Pinchot.
Yeah, this is something we've discussed, and I'm all for. I think, no further questions, no further comments.
Okay, Alderman Meyer.
Passed.
Pass. Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I have nothing.
I don't have anything as well. We've discussed this at length as well. With discussion closed, now I'll ask Town Recorder to please take a roll call vote, please.
Hovland,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show Ordinance 22-04 has been approved and is presented on the first reading. Okay, next will be Ordinance 22-05, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, Zoning, Chapter 3, Section 26, Planned Commercial Development, we call PCD, to clarify that uses permitted in the general commercial or office zoning districts may, rather than shall, be permitted as part of the development plan submitted for rezoning request to PCD. And again, this will be Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, this one is a pretty simple amendment. Basically, in the planned commercial development district, the current language says that any use is permitted in general commercial or our office zoning districts, which there are 3 of them, shall be allowed as part of a planned commercial development. What this amendment does is basically change that word shall to may, so that there's more emphasis placed on the concept plan, the development plan that is required in association with the rezoning, so that those uses can be more evaluated and not really necessarily by right decision, that they can be assessed in terms of their, compatibility with the surroundings or, whatever, as to whether they're appropriate. So that's really all this amendment does. It just changes that one word. And when this was presented to the Planning Commission in February, they also unanimously recommended approval. And the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 22-05 on first reading.
I'm going to move for approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Resident questions?
I do have two on this one, and the first speaker is Michael Wilson.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, would you like to step up to the podium, please?
After him, it's Sean Murphy. So,
Good evening, Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street, Farragut, Tennessee. I would have been at the FMPC meeting to discuss my concern, but I was dealing with the COVID roller coaster at the time. So I just have a few questions regarding this item. In the town's write-up for this item, they state the required concept, quote, the required concept plan would establish what uses would be appropriate as ultimately stipulated by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen through the rezoning process. So does this mean that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would be granted authority to tell a developer which uses under the C1 zoning ordinance paragraph B he or she could build? For example, does this mean that this board or a future board could deny, say, a church in a given PCD development or other type of house of worship or perhaps an indoor theater? Both of these are permitted uses within the uses and structures under the C1 zoning ordinance. So I guess that's maybe a question for Mark. Is that the authority that's being granted the Board of Mayor and Aldermen with this change?
yeah, I can answer that. The PCD actually is a district that is different from most other districts. There is an inherent amount of flexibility and things that the community can ask as part of a rezoning to plan commercial. So that's one of the things that it would give them a little bit more ability to do that as part of their evaluation of the project. The PCD is basically, there's certain things that are given to an applicant that wouldn't be available with a traditional type of development. In exchange for that, the applicant has to understand that they have to, consider giving back, and that may be, looking at some of the uses and whether they fit with the surrounding context and, and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different type of zoning district. That's why a concept plan has always been required to rezone to that, just like town center district, same way. So this is really kind of language that's more consistent, frankly, with the intent of this district than the current language.
Okay, thank you. So I would note, if you look at the requirements under PCD, and in that section, there's nothing that stipulates what kind of development, i.e. if you're building this kind of building, what use could go into that building. You're simply, as for an example, on Biddle Farm, we had 11 commercial buildings, I believe, the Aldi, and then the apartment complex. So I have a concern at what criteria that this board or a future board may use to make those decisions for one parcel versus another parcel when you go to that language of may. I'm not saying I object necessarily to the terminology change. I just want to bring it to the board's attention that I think there ought to be some kind of criteria so that when a developer comes to this podium and wants to develop something, they don't feel like, well, this developer over here, it was approved on that piece of property. I'm asking for a similar thing, but you're denied it on my property. That seems like we would be in a position where they might, look for litigation to try to get justice. To me, understanding the planned commercial development district, it seems the primary reason for this change would be to deny specific residential use on a planned commercial development district, as a developer, could simply go back to C1 zoning, to go back and request a C1 commercial district rezoning if they wanted to build an Aldi's or a store or some other kind of complex. So they could also go to the appropriate office district to do that. So it seems like the big difference between PCD and these other districts is really the residential aspect. I know we've talked a lot about apartments in this last year, and my recommendation has been, and I've put it in the paper, and I'll bring it up here tonight relevant to this, if that truly is the intent that we want to limit or eliminate future high-density residential, particularly in the other areas of the mixed-use town center, there's a simple solution. Change the future land use map and remove those other areas from the mixed-use town center and simply state that Biddle Farm is our mixed-use town center. The C1 zoning ordinance and the other properties would not allow for apartments on them, with the exception if you reapproved a rezoning to R6, which has already been brought up in other areas and been denied. So I just wanted to relay that concern with the language of May. I'm a little concerned that after you all leave, a future board could come in and treat one developer one way, treat another developer another way, and then we have the potential for litigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And second speaker was Sean Murphy.
Good evening. I'd first like to, this is
Name and address, please.
Sean Murphy, 716 Bridgeport Drive. This is my first meeting in Farragut. I'd like to make a couple suggestions about procedure. One would be have public comment before the meeting in the beginning as opposed towards the later half of it. And the second request is, a lot of times people can't get here for a 6 o'clock meeting because they're not home from work. Someone wanted to be here and there's an issue on the interstate. And I would like just consideration of those two issues for the future. I'm here to speak out against specifically Ordinance 2205. I have been elected on a zoning commission in my previous state. And the thing that I found odd about this proposal, these four proposals, is that the town is doing them. And it's pretty customary for applicants to ask for a request to change a major use. And here, where the town is doing it. And I certainly, myself in my experience, haven't seen this very often, and I find it very odd. Don't know what anyone's intentions are. I've only ever spoken to one of you. But that looks bad. Whether it is or not, you folks know. And another thing that I found a little odd, but apparently is normal procedure, is that you've taken a first vote on these changes without actually listening to the public first. And as I understand that, as I found out from Mr. Wilson, that is normal. But usually, at least in my experience of doing this, if you want to make a major change to a town, and there's been a lot of turmoil here, there's been a lot of issues, there's a lot of concerns. We have an election coming up that's going to be contested, and residents have issues. And the best thing to do for the community is let people participate in the process before decisions are made. So I would leave it at that. I also wanted to throw a question out there which can be answered now or another time. Why the legal notice was filed for the next meeting as opposed to the first meeting where our first reading is tonight. It just, again, seems odd to me, and part of it could very well be that I'm from another part of the country, and things are done differently in Tennessee. There's a lot of things that are done a lot better here, which is why I'm here. But again, there's a lot of people that are moving here, people from other parts of the country, people who haven't been involved here before, and these perceptions, whether or not there's any malintention, which I don't know what you folks are, what your intentions are, but the perception is that these sorts of issues, I don't want to say makes you look bad, but it looks odd to people who are observing, and there may be a perfectly good reason for it. Sometimes you can do a great job, but the process doesn't work correctly, and I would leave it at that. I would like to see in the future with land use, and it's one thing that this town has needed for probably 20 years, which would probably predate all of you folks being involved with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, is to have a professionally designed plan where we're not stacking and packing, we're not overbuilding. We have many examples where traffic, it can take, I've sat in it, it's taken a half an hour to go a couple blocks here. And I think that's one thing that this town has needed, and I'd like to challenge you folks now and the next Board of Mayor and Aldermen to, we're past the point where we should have done things a little differently. And we can say, what was done before you isn't your fault or your responsibility, but when you land with something like that, at least see what you can do to make the best of the situation. My big issue with this change is consistent with Mr. Wilson's comments. Changing shall to may, I don't like that. I think it leaves a lot of ambiguity. It can lead to problems. If an applicant wants to do something, then make that change then. But that's a big change. And I hope I'll be here at the next meeting and maybe we can get some context of what folks are thinking about, since the vote was basically with minimal questions or concerns or comments. Thank you for my time.
For clarity, we haven't voted yet. We just made a motion and a second, and then brought it to the floor to discuss, and that's what we're doing right now. So we have not voted yet. The second public hearing notice was placed in the paper because we have a legal requirement via statutory. Tennessee code tells us we have to do 15 days a notice before an ordinance can be enacted. And an ordinance is not enacted on the first hearing. An ordinance is enacted after the second hearing. So when this comes up for first hearing, you will already see the public hearing notice for second hearing, so that we are following state law. So that's why that's in there like that. The intention of changing from may to shall was to make it very clear that what drives planned commercial development is the development plan. We are approving the development plan. There's a lot of flexibility that goes into PCD, but there's also a lot of what we expect out of getting a development that is zoned for PCD. In one of the things we want to do is establish a sense of place, allow the design of commercial, office, residential developments that are architecturally and environmentally innovative, that achieve more efficient use of land. It's supposed to bring something nicer to that part of the community. Now, PCD in mixed-use town center does not allow for automotive uses, but a PCD, potentially, they could bring in an automotive use in the PCD out in Watt Road. And do we really want another tire store in a PCD? Or a automotive. We're trying to get away from that type of idea. And so those were the concerns I was bringing up with changing it from may to shall. It put more accent on the fact that the development plan is what's driving this particular zoning, and that's what we're trying to get, something that's more community-based, more walkable, that's what the planned commercial development was supposed to be about originally. So making sure that the concern is placed on the development plan, not this idea that once you have it, you can put any use you want in there, whether it makes sense with the surrounding development or what we're trying to achieve with that PCD. That can be an issue. So that was the driving force of this, was to provide the community with a little more say with what happens in the PCD zoning district. And to Mr. Murphy's concern, the town of Farragut is often the applicant for changes. We update our ordinances on a regular basis because when we just did it a couple of months ago when the Baptist Church came to amend our lighting ordinance so that they could ask for poles. Well, that's still kind of off on the side. They haven't come back. But in the review of that, Mark got an opportunity to go back through that ordinance and bring it back up to date, and that was a town of Farragut applicant. We often update our zoning ordinances to stay current or to remove language that we have an issue with. We removed storage units out of the commercial, what is it, C2? I don't know what that is, just recently, because we don't want storage units by the highway. We learned that lesson the hard way, but we went back and we amended that zoning ordinance for that particular reason. We're all residents here, trying to make our community the best it can be, while adhering to the fact that people have private property rights. We have the right to establish a zoning ordinance. We have the right to set up a land use plan, and we've done those things. And we continue to work. Every property is different. Every property has its own context that we have to work within to make sure that we're not putting in something that is completely out of place. And that takes a lot of thought and a lot of planning and a lot of work with our with developers. And we try to be adhere to people's rights to exercise their property rights. But we also have the zoning ordinances and the abilities we can to control from the town's perspective, from the community's perspective, how that development happens. So that's the reason for this, from May to shall to May, is to provide a little bit more control from us, from the community, about what we get from a planned commercial development. They get a lot more flexibility. We want to make sure that in that flexibility, we're getting a development that meets the town's standards.
I'd like to add something to that. It was very, very well said. A few years back, we felt there was a need for a new zoning, and we created the NCC, the Neighborhood Convenience Commercial Zone, and good intentions. We were trying to be proactive rather than reactive, and here it is a year or two, a couple of years later, and we needed to tweak it. I mean, it was new, it was something new. Staff thought they had it nailed in the beginning, but we saw we needed some changes, and so that's why we're amending. And that's what we do a lot of these things. We amend them as we go along where we see a change is needed. So that's what we're doing today.
Thank you.
I'll address the time. Previously, we were a 7 o'clock start, and that was something that works great with Planning Commission. With the board, we wanted to start earlier because typically a board meeting does not last nowhere near as long as a Planning Commission meeting does. But we started earlier. We start at 6, and typically a board meeting will last maybe an hour and a half. And before, it was being something where we were asked to let the citizens forum happen a little bit sooner. And understand, a citizens forum is not required by law. It is something that we allow for the citizens to come up and speak if it's not something that's on the agenda. So it's when we have people here, typically tonight is not the same as normal. Normally we have different people that's asking for different ordinances and zoning requests, and they're the ones that are here to pay to be here, and we have to hear those. And once we're done with those, and then we do want to hear what the citizens have to say, and we also want to hear what the citizens have to say if it has something to do with an ordinance or with a zoning change like what we have tonight. So the putting the citizens forum on the back end was a decision to let's get our business done, and then we can talk. And then the move to 6 o'clock was to really get people in and out. So if it had been a normal citizens forum at a board meeting, then that would have happened at approximately 8:30, if you figure starting at 7, and it lasted an hour and a half. The way it is now with a 6 o'clock start, typically citizens forums about 7:30, so you're really moving it up approximately an hour as far as the citizens will be able to come in front and talk to us. So that was the reasoning for the change. I hope that answers your question. Okay, anything else? No other? Okay, good. Okay, we'll start then with the discussion, and we'll start with Alderman Pinchot.
I have no further comments or questions?
Alderman Meyer.
Pass.
Alderman Burnett.
Further questions?
Okay, Vice Mayor Povlin. You're good, I'm good as well. With discussion closed, I'll ask Town Recorder, take a roll call vote, please.
Burnett. Yes. Alderman Meyer.
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Yes.
Alderman Povlin.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Let the record show that ordinance 22-05 has been approved as presented on the first reading, and there will be a second reading at the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to what we have is a very busy business section, tonight's agenda, with 12 items to consider. We'll start off with approval of the 2022 Forget-Me-Not 5K Run.
This event is the same route as in the previous years, and they're looking at doing this event the morning of April 16th of 2022. They anticipate 750 to 1,000 participants, and so the motion is to approve the event application on April 16th involving use of the town's public right-of-ways and pedestrian facilities for the Forget-Me-Not 5K for Alzheimer's benefiting the Pat Summitt Clinic.
Okay, do we have any resident questions on this one?
No, sir.
Okay, none. Okay, great. I'll ask for a motion then.
Do we have anyone that needs to speak to it first, or do we do motion first? I'm sorry. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, with that, no resident questions. I'll ask for Alderman Meyer. Do you have any questions or comments?
I think it's a great cause, and I support it.
Okay.
all.
Alderman Pinchot?
I support it.
Alderman Burnett? Vice Mayor Povlin?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay, same here. Okay. I'll now ask that all in favor vote approval by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Let the record show that the request has been approved as requested. Okay, next will be approval of the contract with Cope Architecture for Town Hall Design Services.
Thank you, Mayor. The town hall originally opened in 1991, and now we're moved along 30 years later, and much of the office space has been filled up and does not provide for efficient working environment for our staff to be able to conduct public meetings and do their work that they need to do. In this year's capital investment program, we budgeted monies for design services. Staff went out for a request for qualifications and selected Cope Architecture as the most qualified firm. Part of the work that Cope will be doing this year is reviewing our current use of space to allocate and rearrange program functions, to design a full renovation of the first and second floors of the town hall, which would include flooring, demolition, and building new interior walls as needed, as well as renovations to the board chambers and cost estimates for all the work to be performed. Casey Petco, who's the president of Cope, has broken this down into 3 phases. First phase is for schematic design and design development. Second phase is for construction documents, and third phase is for procurement and construction administration. And part of that first phase will also be a cost estimate for what the work to be looked at will be. So if the board elects to stop the project, then all we would do is pay for phase 1 at that time, or we can reevaluate it as well. So staff's recommendation is to approve the contract for a total of $90,200 with Cope Architecture.
Okay, thank you, David.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any residents signed up for this one?
No, sir.
None, okay. Okay, we'll start off with Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
Pass.
Vice Mayor.
I have nothing.
I don't either. All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Let the record show that contract has been approved for Cope Architecture. Okay, next will be approval of Resolution R 2022-02, resolution adopting the Town of Farragut's 2022-2023 strategic plan.
Mayor, each year, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and our town staff get together and we discuss priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. We did that in February of this year, and we always look at our initial and current strategic plan, which is looking at our vision, also looking at our mission and our values, and finally breaking it down into our critical success factors. And each of these critical success factors has a multitude of priorities in each area, in every line. All those are attached to your to your board report this evening, but we would just ask that the board approve Resolution 2022-02, adopting this year's Town of Farragut strategic plan, and many of these items you will be seeing in your budget process as well.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Any resident questions on this
No, sir.
one? None, okay. Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett. Vice Mayor. I have nothing as well. All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Let the record show the resolution has been approved as requested. Okay, next will be approval of Resolution R 2022-03, resolution declaring certain town property to be surplus property.
Yes, sir. Tonight we have 3 items to be surplus. We have 2 2016 John Deere mowers and a 2013 John Deere Gator. And those are in a resolution that will be put on GovDeals. And the motion is to approve Resolution R 2022-03, resolution declaring certain town property be surplus property.
Move to approve.
Okay, any resident questions?
No, sir.
None, okay. Alderman Meyer, Pinchot,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
Pass.
Vice Mayor. Okay, question I have is this will be through the normal procedure of a surplusing? Okay,
Yes, sir.
great. All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Let the record show the resolution has been approved as requested. Okay, approval of Resolution R 2022-04, resolution to support restoring the historic revenue sharing relationship between the state of Tennessee and its local government and return the local share of single article cap to local government.
Mayor, back in 2002, during a budget crisis, the state of Tennessee enacted 2 different measures to avoid a real issue that they had during that time. First is they altered a 55-year revenue sharing relationship to the detriment of municipal governments by raising the state sales tax from 6% to 7%. But at that time, they did not raise any of the revenue share that they had with municipalities. Also during that time, they enacted a second increase, which was in the single article cap. So everything that anybody buys in the state of Tennessee is capped at $3,200. However, the municipalities only get the first half of that, the $1,600. So when they increased it for locals, but the state kept that additional funding. So right now, before the state legislature, there are 2 bills that are before them. House Bill 212, Senate Bill 2076, which is carried by Senator Briggs. This would restore the historic revenue sharing relationship with local governments. There's also House Bill 2562, Senate Bill 2469. And this would actually raise the single article cap and allow, it would keep the single article cap the same, but allow local governments to share in that in the increase from $1,600 to $3,200. The overall estimate of the impact for the town of Farragut, if these 2 bills are approved, would be approximately $370,000 in recurring revenue. The fact that the state just recently, this year, is getting rid of the hall income tax, that used to be 10% of our budget. So this would help bring some of those dollars back, not all, but some of those dollars back. And so this resolution would be going to all of our representatives and to the Lieutenant Governor and to the Speaker of the House, and we'll actually be meeting with them next week in Nashville as we go to the TML conference. So motion would be to approve Resolution R-2022-04.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any resident questions on this one?
No, sir.
None? Okay, great. Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
Pass.
Vice Mayor. Well, this is something that should have happened a long time ago. I think we've been in such a budget surplus that I am glad to see it's making its way through, and let's hope that we get some good positive votes and get this back. It's much needed based on the hall tax going away. That's all I have. And all in favor, vote by saying yes.
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 Let the record show the resolution has been approved. This will go to our legislators. The TML has sponsored this request that we do this, so that's one of the reasons we're getting it done so quickly. Approval of the professional services agreement with Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. to provide townwide stormwater infrastructure assessment.
Good evening. As you mentioned, this is an agreement with civil and environmental consultants for a town-wide assessment of our stormwater infrastructure. You'll recall 3 or 4 years ago, we had to replace 3 or 4 very large pipes on an emergency basis due to the fact they were failing after a very major storm. That was very expensive, and it was also unplanned. But it did make it clear to us that we do have aging infrastructure, and it was time to have a full-blown assessment of everything we own. We contracted with CEC. A couple of years ago, they finished a pilot project, which was the assessment of all of the stormwater infrastructure in Fox Run subdivision. Now, the good thing about that is it created a database that we worked with them to come up with this format that works best for the town, for our purposes. With approval of this, CEC will locate all of our stormwater infrastructure, all of the pipes, all of the catch basins, assess them as best they can, provide all of the information into the database, and eventually we will have a priority listing so that we'll be able to budget for pipes that need to be replaced or lined or however we're going to do that. So with that, this has a $1,032,000 estimated fee. It is funded through ARPA funds. So we're thankful for that. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, great.
Second.
Okay, any resident questions on
No,
this
sir.
one? None, okay. We'll start with discussion with Alderman Meyer.
I know stormwater is near and dear to everyone's heart, but I do want to thank the Vice Mayor for passionately bringing this issue to our attention when I first came on the board, and I'm very excited to see we're moving forward with this assessment. So, no other comment.
Alderman Pinchot,
I have no comments.
Alderman Burnett.
We've come a long way to approve $1 million just like that for stormwater.
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge that.
Dog park, stormwater, whatever.
No further questions. Yeah. No further questions.
Vice Mayor Pavlin, you got the floor.
You guys know that this is something that we have needed to do. We get this done, and we are in a much better condition to know what is going on in our town. Between this and the paving of our neighborhoods that are coming up, these are the two things that I think are unknowns for us right now, especially with asphalt going out through the window. So I am thrilled about this. Glad that the timing was so that we've got ARPA funds to pay for it, so that we don't have to do it over 4 years. We're doing it in 1 year, and we can move along with our day, get it all prioritized, and start working through that. So thank you. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support.
Okay, in my case, I'm thanking David for his looking into it like he did with both our stormwater and our broadband when we get to that. So all in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show the agreement has been approved, and thank you, Darrell. Okay, next will be approval of professional services agreement with Civil Environmental Consultants for development of the FY22 stormwater repairs project. And we have Brandon.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, this is approval of professional services agreement with Civil and Environmental Consultants for development of the FY22 stormwater repairs project. Not a whole lot to say. Darrell kind of laid out exactly where we're at with stormwater and where we're moving forward. What this project actually does is last year we repaired 9 pipes throughout town that were badly deteriorated. This is just a continuation of that effort with the same firm, CEC. So what the contract will do is take 10 of the most critical pipes that are known in town that are deteriorated. CEC will develop a design for repair of them, primarily using cured in place pipe. That's our target for all these repairs. And then they will assist with development of the bid, project administration, and then review and construction services as well. So with that said, it's a $10,500 base fee, and that's for the basic design services, with an additional $6,500 for on-call. And again, that's for things like reviewing post-construction video, inspections, reviewing test reports, and things of that nature. So, and as well as the project just before me, this is also being funded through the ARPA funding. So with that said, I'd like to recommend approval of the professional services agreement with Civil and Environmental Consultants for development of the FY22 Stormwaters Repair Project.
Move to approve.
Okay. Any?
Sir.
Okay. We'll start off with Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
No questions.
Vice Mayor.
Nothing.
Okay, Brandon, for the folks at home that's watching, describe how the repair takes place.
Yeah.
I think people hear that nomenclature, but they're not really sure exactly how that works, and I think it would be an interesting sidebar.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of ways you can go about repair, and one of them is just a replacement, and that's very invasive. Most of these pipes are underneath the roadway system, so it involves road closures, excavation, reinstallation takes a lot of time. So what we try to do is what's called cured in place pipe, CIPP. What it involves is actually taking a resin-soaked like a resin-soaked sack, and they place it inside of the pipe and then inject it with either hot water or hot steam, and it cures actually in place. So you don't have to do any excavation. The pipe that is there remains there, but this just forms a pipe within that pipe, and it's just as structurally sound as concrete pipe, just as durable and long-lasting. Again, it allows us to do it much quicker, much less invasive. And it's just, we had a lot of success with it last year.
So the life's the same as concrete?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So, Brandon, I'm sorry, now that you've said that, how long does CIPP last? What's the lifespan of that?
There's a few different, I want to say grades that you can go with, but again, it's comparable to the life cycle of a concrete pipe.
Okay. So at some point, do you, this will deteriorate. At that point, are you digging the pipe up and just starting over again, or can you do this again?
It'd probably have to be a case-by-case basis, because
Okay.
you are losing a little bit of your diameter and a little bit of your flow. Now, a benefit, actually, most of these pipes are corrugated metal, which have like a ribbing, and this goes back with a smooth surface, so actually, it typically increases flow capacity for the pipe. So.
Oh,
All right.
common sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? No? Okay. In case, all in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show the agreement has been approved.
Thank you, Brandon.
It's good information. Okay, next will be approval of the amendment to option lease agreement of property at 519 Virtue Road, STC 2, LLC applicant, successor by assignment to Sprint Inc., care of Crown Castle USA, Inc. Well, that's a mouthful.
It is indeed. For the record, I'm Trevor Hobbs, Assistant to the Title Administrator. It is my absolute pleasure to present this amendment to the board this evening. The item before you is a proposed amendment to the town's existing agreement for the lease of land related to the cell tower at what we call 519 Virtue Road. The effect of this amendment is to extend the term of the lease and to increase the rates paid to the town. By way of background, the existing agreement we have right now for the lease of land at this cell tower site was made in 1998 and included several consecutive 5-year terms, which could be renewed. Rates were set forth to include a base rent for the tower itself, as well as a cost to be paid for every co-located antenna or carrier. The fourth and final term of this agreement will be ending at the end of September 2023, and according to the terms of the agreement, if the town does not provide written notice in its desire to terminate this agreement by approximately the end of next February, then the agreement would renew automatically for a one-year term, essentially at the same rates as exist right now. Therefore, in preparation for the termination of this fourth term next year, staff have worked with representatives from Crown Castle, which is the agent of the leaseholder, to prepare this proposed amendment for the lease agreement, and that is what is before you tonight for approval. So in terms of the proposed amendment itself, it would make a few specific changes, and I'll go through those individually just so you're understanding what this agreement is all about. First, it would extend the contract term through September of 2043, which is an extension of 20 years. It would increase the base rent for the tower site itself from $14,700 per year to $30,000 per year, effective October of 2023, when the current term ends. That is an increase of 104%. For new antenna to be attached to this tower after this agreement is effective, it would replace the co-location fee of $84.50 per year per co-located carrier with a revenue share of 20%. This means that the town would receive 20% of the amount paid to the carrier, or sorry, to the leasee by the carrier, to the tower company by the carrier. And fourth, for existing antenna already on the tower, the co-location fee will increase from $84.50 a year to $9,720 per year, effective 2 months after this agreement is effective, and that's an increase of 15%. Next, beginning in October of 2024, the base rent and co-location fees for existing carriers will increase by 3%, and they will continue to increase by 3% every year following, instead of increasing by 15% every 5 years. Next, in lieu of increased rents at this time, until October of 2023, the town would receive a prepayment of $25,000, which is roughly equivalent to the rates that would have otherwise been paid during that time. And this means we would not lose out on any revenues by forestalling that rate change until that point. And finally, the amendment would add an additional clause into the contract, which would give them the right of first refusal, which is a standard contract feature. And what this would do is, in the event that the town would receive a proposal from another tower company to acquire this lease, then Crown Castle would have the opportunity to say, I can pay that instead, and in order to keep their lease. So in order to summarize sort of the financial impact of these changes, first, the proposed amendment would bring the town total revenue of more than $1.3 million over the course of this 20-year extended agreement term. And this represents essentially an increase of 54% above and beyond the total revenue that we will receive at the end of the current agreement term. And that's from 1998 till 2023. That's about an extra $700,000 in revenue. Secondly, by changing the schedule of rate increases from 15% every 5 years to 3% annually, we will receive an additional $94,000 in revenue over the course of this term, just from that alone. Additionally, I'd like to point out that this proposed amendment will bring the town an additional $422,000 of revenue above and beyond what we would receive if we had just renewed the contract at the existing rates and kept moving forward from where we are right now. So in conclusion, this proposed amendment to the lease agreement has been reviewed by staff as well as the town's attorney, and we find that the drafted instrument accurately reflects the complete substance of the negotiated terms. In other words, everything we talked about with Crown Castle or emailed about is accurately reflected in this agreement. There were no changes made after we discussed it. And we believe that the rate increases are fair according to market benchmarks, and that the amendment is mutually beneficial to the town and to the tower company. Therefore, it is proposed that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve the First Amendment to the option and lease agreement for property at 519 Virtue Road between the town of Farragut and STC2 LLC.
Move to approve.
Second.
Questions?
No, sir.
None. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Okay, Alderman Meyer?
So the only question I have is you mentioned that 30,000 comes from benchmarks, so that's, I guess, fair market value. What kind of benchmarks were used?
That specifically, when the tower company reached out, they wanted to renew the agreement as it stands. And the person we dealt with was unaware that we have another tower site in town at another location, and that tower site's contract was renewed more recently at a more market consistent rate of 30,000. That's the base rent. So we just said, why would we renew that at half the rate when you're already paying us $30,000 at this other site? So we just encouraged them to bring it up to meet the same base rent as we have at that other site.
So is it $30,000? Is that typical rental for an antenna?
It's
Yes, I mean,
so they all
why not 40? Why not
Yeah.
50,000? If that's what the market calls for. Like, I don't know how Knoxville does it or Loudoun County, but I was just curious if we looked outside of our own borders to figure out what fair market value might really be.
That's a great question, and actually the representative we dealt with did share market information.
Okay.
So we were able to see that in most every case, the rates that we're receiving are significantly above
Okay.
what others are receiving. There were one or two of much larger sites, which I presume have a lot more equipment on them,
Gotcha.
that received slightly more, but by and large, these are above average rates.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, what we found is that they don't publish the information. It's not public information. And so we have some consultants we use from time to time that are in the market that we can call and ask, what are you seeing in this area, in this range? And we've been able to make sure that what we were getting was, at market or above. And they've been pretty interested in getting this renewal because I think this is about the third time we've worked through this with them in the past 4 or 5 years. So I think we're in pretty good shape based on the market here.
Great.
I
Thank
will
you.
also say during the time that we were working with this representative from Crown Castle, we also had some discussions with other tower companies, and they were offering half. And they thought their offers were amazing and shiny and beautiful.
Well, I'm very excited about
But
this offer.
we
so
had
I don't
some-
have no
we had
other
some
comments.
great
It's going
resources
in
through-
the right direction, so that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Tom was
Thank
very
you.
helpful with getting some of that information.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Pinchot?
I really appreciate this proposal and this, what y'all have done, but I sure wish we could put some pressure on them to get me 2 bars in my house instead of 1 bar, because I got to move from my office to the kitchen and make phone calls, and it's getting pretty rough, but. Anyways, I'm good.
Alderman Burnett?
Very thorough, Trevor. Good job. That's it.
You have no whine about the bars?
I'm just a little further west.
Of all the people, of all the people.
It's fine in the Burnett house.
Probably authorize another tower somewhere in town.
I'm
if
going
you
to put
wanted
one in
to
my
do that.
backyard.
Like right next to your house.
On its way out, thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
I have nothing.
I don't either.
I don't know how to follow that up.
All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show the agreement has been approved. Thank you, Trevor. Okay, approval of fire prevention and public fire education services agreement with Rural Metro of Tennessee.
Mayor, the town of Farragut, as you all know, provides code enforcement services for all of our building inspections throughout the town. And part of that deals with fire prevention services as well by a certified fire marshal. Fire marshal or fire prevention, education, and inspections are vital to helping keep citizens and our buildings that we occupy safe. This agreement with Rural Metro provides that a fire marshal who is a certified fire inspector 1 will devote at least 90% of his regular working hours in the performance of fire prevention and education services in the town. These services can include plans review, safety inspections, fire prevention, education programs, and developing fire and safety procedures for town facilities and equipment. In this contract agreement, it would be an annual payment to Rural Metro of $73,550, paid in 4 quarterly installments. Each anniversary date would increase that amount by 3.2%. And at the election of the town, additional fire prevention services could be utilized for 20 hours per week at a quarterly fee of $7,960 per staff member. So motion here and recommendation is to approve the fire prevention agreement between the town of Farragut and Rural Metro of Tennessee. And I know Chief Harnish and Fire Marshal Dan Johnson are both here in case the board has any questions of them.
I'm going to move to approve.
Okay. See, Alderman Meyer?
Whenever I see first responders, I just want to say thank you for all that you do for our community and for our families. You're heroes. Thank you.
Alderman Pinchot?
I appreciate y'all as well. Thank you.
Alderman Burnett?
Yeah, a couple questions. So this says the person will devote 90% of the regular working hours to town of Farragut. And then at the bottom it says, at the election of the town, additional fire prevention services can be utilized for 20 hours a week. Those different?
Those would be
It's just education?
No, those would be different. One of the issues that Dan and I have certainly talked about over the years is additional inspections of some of our commercial facilities on a more regular basis. Certainly when we have permits and applications and things like that, they're going to be in the building, they're going to be reviewing those. But in high occupancy buildings, I know Dan could address this or Chief could address this better than I, but high occupancy buildings they go into very frequently. But some of the other buildings we may not see for a little while. And so this would allow us to get there on a more regular basis and make sure that they're up to code, that there's no, exit doors blocked, things like that. So if we don't need them, then we wouldn't have to utilize them, but if we do, then we would.
Okay.
I just wondered if there was more of a sticking your foot in and getting warm as opposed to, it just looks like a very large step forward. I wondered if it was like a part-time, maybe half the time that's listed on here as opposed to that much expense, especially if I know we've had fires and clearly that's absolute worst case scenario, but if we're introducing it, I wonder why we wouldn't start here instead of going full time.
Right. This is for up to 20 hours per week, and it would be paid on the quarter. So every 3 months we'd pay the $79.60. But I'll let Dan address maybe just the time frame of I know you guys are pretty busy right now.
Yeah, Dan Johnson, Town Fire Marshal. So essentially what this is there's not enough hours in the day, in the week for just me. And we've recognized that additional time is needed. So initially we spoke with David and said at least somebody up to 20 hours a week, so a part-time person, would be devoted in addition to my hours to cover some of those things that we're not able to achieve as thoroughly as we would like to. And it's at the town's option. So if at some point, development and new construction is basically my primary day-to-day activities right now, if at some point, we hope not, things drop out and there's no new construction and no development, well then the town's not obligated necessarily to continue that additional person.
So I may have misread it, but I read I will devote 90% of his regular working time. So I thought a new person was going to have 90% of the new person's time for fire inspections, but I've misread that.
Yeah, you get me for 90%, and we need another person for probably 20 hours a week.
Okay.
That's the short of it. And we utilized some NFPA, National Fire Protection Association documents to quantify that. In going through, it assigns roughly times for inspections and that type of thing. And as I expressed to the chief, I said, well, chief, if we do exactly what the town wants, I'll have 3 hours a year to do all the new inspections, new construction, development inspection, and anything else. And we spoke to David, and David said, okay, we definitely can work on that. So I appreciate the opportunity to have somebody additional working with me. We actually have had somebody working with me that we haven't necessarily billed the town for, just because we don't want things falling through the gaps. This is more of formalizing that agreement, wouldn't you say, David?
Absolutely, yes. And I think, true, Dan has a busy schedule as well on many different trainings and things that they go to. And so just having somebody else to be able to fill in from time to time with all the projects, as Dan just mentioned, we have going on. He spends a lot of times just reviewing plans and meeting with developers and going through projects that are being built. So that is the bulk of his time with us. So getting around to doing these other things has been difficult, I think.
For example, we have increased the building inspection staff, which I understand they do a lot more residential stuff, and we have a lot of residential going on. But we've increased the staffing there in the time span that I've been here, and we haven't really. I think we've added 2 building inspectors in that time span, and we haven't added anybody to assist in my position. So.
Okay, great. A good example of a time suck would be something like Sitel.
Yes.
It's,
Yes.
You have businesses that come in then like that, then they require a lot of time, and at that point, you really need to make sure that you've got backup to do other things that might happen. So, okay, all in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Let the record show the agreement has been approved. Okay, next will be approval of fire prevention and public fire education services agreement with rural Metro Tennessee.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, the town has had a long relationship with Rural Metro. They have covered our fire services for the town for over 30 years. Currently, we have an ISO rating of 3, 1 being highest, 10 being lowest, and they've been able to increase that since I've been here from a 4 to a 3. The terms of this agreement for 5 years and allow either party to terminate the contract with 12 months written notice. It also sets terms for calls and how quickly they're supposed to get to calls. It talks about also how their ISO rating should remain at least a 4 or better during the effectiveness of this contract. And it would only allow for subscription rates. And as we know, Rural Metro is a subscription service. And so those rates cannot be increased more than 3% per year for residential subscribers and 5% for commercial subscribers. All the current rate schedules are attached for your review, but this agreement would be to approve the agreement between the town of Farragut and Rural Metro of Tennessee for fire, emergency, and environmental hazardous materials response, and we recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. No questions, I assume, again. Okay, and Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot?
Yes.
Alderman Burnett?
No questions.
Vice Mayor?
Pass.
I have none as well. All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Let the record show the agreement has been approved as presented. Okay, next will be approval of request to approve an excess and associated variance from the distance between driveway requirements for collector streets as provided for in driveways and other accessways ordinance for proposed residential driveway at 408 Herron Road. Chesterman Restoration applicant.
Yes, this item is a request for a residential access onto Herron Road. The existing access you can see there on the screen is on the north end of the lot, and they're building a new home on this property, and they're wanting to put the access further south to improve really visibility so that they can see oncoming traffic that's coming up the hill from Campbell Station Road. Herron Road's a collector street, so new accesses onto collector arterial roads have to go through the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So that's why it's being presented to you all. They also are requesting a variance because on a collector street, accesses are required to be 200 feet apart, but the nearest access on the other side, the northwest side, is 100 feet from their proposed access. So they're requesting a variance of 100 feet with this request. The engineering staff did go out and look at the site distance, and they are satisfied with the proposed access. The applicants are really, like I said earlier, trying to make it more safe than the current situation because apparently they can't see cars coming up the hill until they're, already coming around the curve and they're pulling out of their access. So this allows them actually to see them coming up the hill before they pull out onto Herron Road. So when this was presented to the Planning Commission last month, they did unanimously recommend approval of this access and associated variance, and the staff also recommends approval.
Second.
Are we approving this all in one as far as access and variance? Okay, that's what I need to know. That's all I have. Vice Mayor?
I have nothing.
Alderman Burnett? Alderman Pinchot?
Pass.
Alderman Meyer? Okay. All in favor, vote by saying yes. Yes. Let the record show the request has been approved for the driveway change on 408 Herron Road. Next will be approval of memorandum of agreement between Town of Farragut and Town Administrator. Tom, you're up.
I'm glad the town administrator moved to the back of the room. I didn't want him to hit me when I'm going through this. All of you know, the mayor asked myself and Michelle Pence to do a comprehensive review of what other municipalities are doing for their town administrators as far as compensation is concerned, benefits, and their overall package. When we got into this, what we realized is that David Smoke has been here since, well, he's been here 12 years, and we really haven't done a comprehensive review of his package in that entire time. Generally speaking, David has, and this happens in a lot of not-for-profit organizations, where there's the leader of the band that looks after everybody in the band, but sometimes there's really nobody that looks after the leader of the band. And unfortunately, I think one of the things I've realized, and I would like to encourage all of us, is that the leader of the band needs to be looked after occasionally as well. And that's what we have tried to do, is to look at what other municipalities are doing for their town administrators as far as their compensation is concerned and their benefits. And that is what Ms. Pence and I have done. We have, as we were doing it, there's another thing that came to us as we were going through this process, and that is that the town of Farragut, by the election of its people and its leaders, has adopted a really, really unique model in how it operates. Do you know any town anywhere or any city that does not borrow money to fund its projects or operations? Add on top of that, do you know any city anywhere that doesn't have a property tax that has 22,000 or more residents and that does the kind of things that the town of Farragut does. It is, in my experience, a very, very unique model. Well, that model has some costs associated to it. It means that you have to have someone who is experienced and has the stature in order to be the leader of an economic development branch of the government to bring in businesses that create the kind of revenues that pay state shared taxes, because that's where we get our money, is from state shared taxes, whether it be sales, liquor, whatever. Not every kind of business creates, or every kind of organization creates those kind of revenues. So to operate a town like Farragut on the model we have, the person that is running it needs to have a very, very good understanding of how to budget and a very good understanding of how to raise revenues through use of whatever means are available to that person. The town has been blessed over the years with having, and we're blessed now, we have a lot of really, really good senior level management people that have brought continuity to the town. They've been here, most of the senior management people, for a long time. David's now been here for 12 years. One of the things I've learned in my law firm is right now it's hard to find people to come to work. And when you do find them, they're pretty easily swayed to move somewhere else from time to time. So in today's world, in today's market, you have to be knowing that we all know that people are the most important asset of any organization. If you have good people, you really have to keep them. And if you don't try to keep them and be willing to be fair and look at the market and compensate people the way they should be compensated, then you're going to end up without good people, and that'll affect the quality of the organization. So with all those thoughts in mind, let me just say a thing about David personally. He has a way about him that is very attractive to people. He gets along well with the county officials. He gets along well with the state representatives. He gets along well with pretty much everybody he deals with. I think without question. I've never seen anybody that had a problem with David Smoke. Folks, that's not the case in most places. So I think that needs to be said, and it needs to be acknowledged, and our recommendation that is incorporated in this memorandum of agreement is designed to reflect that and to provide him with a competitive package that is similar to other people that have the same years of experience and have the same skills and abilities, even though he has skills and abilities that a lot of the other town administrators in the state of Tennessee don't have, because if they don't have enough money to operate, they just start raising the property tax, and or they go figure out a way to borrow some money and issue bonds or something like that. We just don't do that. And we pretty much get everything done that people want. It's really a pretty remarkable thing. So when you give me a job like this to do, Mayor, you're going to get a little bit more than you bargained for. And this was a project that I appreciated being involved in, and I think our recommendation will speak for itself. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, if you have any.
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Tom. No resident questions?
Sir.
None, okay. Discussion, we'll start off with Vice Mayor Powell.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I'll add a little bit to what Tom says. I have had the occasion to work with David in a myriad of different types of communities, whether it be at the state, when we go to TML at the state, he knows people walking down the hall, he knows legislators, he knows what we need to get done, he knows, working with Chuck Lane, how to work with our elected officials at the state level, which can be very intimidating. I've attended ICSC in Las Vegas, where we talked with developers and people trying to sell our town to anyone that might be interested in development. So it's a different light that I got to see. And then, of course, Knox County, we just recently met with, they're going through an advanced Knox, and it was very impressed me that they were in unison, wanted David to serve on that board, the executive board, for putting advanced Knox forward. So that says, considering where we started with Knox County, that says a lot about where we are in our relationship with Knox County. And we are now, I think, a more valued partner with them. So I agree with your assessment, Tom. He's got a man of many hats. There are very few times when I've seen his feathers ruffled. Very few. I think I can count one. And so that's an impressive thing.
Were you the cause?
No, I was not. As a Jersey girl, that's always an impressive asset when you can see somebody who just doesn't get their feathers. It's a cool customer. So I agree with your assessment, and I appreciate your efforts in crafting this. And Mayor Williams, I appreciate your efforts to get this dealt with.
Okay, next, thank you. Next will be Alderman Meyer.
I just want to say, Tom, I agree with you wholeheartedly that good people deserve good compensation. And if we don't compensate them according to their skills, we will lose them. The five of us will be gone someday, some of us sooner rather than others. But I hope this package keeps David here for a very long time, because I think David is the thread that keeps the entire quilt of Farragut going and together. So I wholeheartedly support this package. I think it's long overdue, and I'm very excited and grateful to approve it.
Thank you. Alderman Pinchot.
Yeah, I have to say that I've been on the board for 8 years, and prior to that, on committees where I've chaired. So I've been around for 11 years, almost as long as David. And from the beginning, David, I appreciate all that you helped me with. It was a steep learning curve when I was first elected, and you were always there to answer all my questions and help me. So greatly appreciated. I have read through this thoroughly, and I agree with everything in it. I think you deserve it. And I just thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, I don't know about y'all, but he yells at me a lot. It's his feathers
To you.
ruffled, and he's throwing things at me in his office. So if there's going to be one person to keep him honest, I'm happy for it to be me.
Okay. Before I say anything, I'm going to let Bud come up and say a few words.
I didn't know y'all were going to talk so highly of him, so I thought I'd get up. I know he yells at you, Drew, but he yells at me even more. So, no, he has never raised his voice to me. You all know I've been here for a long time. I've worked for every city manager that the town has had. So everybody has their strong points. Everybody has their weak points. But as far as David's concerned, as far as I'm concerned, the way he's treated me, I've watched him throughout the time that he's been here for the 12 years. As far as every aspect of how he handles himself professionally with staff, interacts with staff, we couldn't, he's the best one we've had so far.
Okay, thank you, Bud. As I said in the retreat, we need to be able to retain who we have and attract whenever we need to attract, which means when we have people that retire. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our compensation is in line, and we've done that with all other employees. And with David was the very last one, and it was due time, but this one was a little bit different search in that we asked Tom to be involved on a professional level to do this. So anyway, at that point, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, vote by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any noes? I hear none, so let the record show that the MOA has been approved as requested.
All right.
Ending with that, I'll let David sit down and give us his report.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Board. I truly appreciate it. You know, when my wife and I moved here 12 years ago, we didn't really realize what a blessing this place was going to be to us, but it really has. And not just from a work and that kind of relationship, but just from a family relationship, from a community relationship, building great friends. And so that's been wonderful. I appreciate the Board and just your generosity and you know, obviously hoping that we were able to stay here for a really, really long time. But I can't do any of this stuff that I do without great staff. And, you know, we have been blessed to have wonderful department heads that have been able to keep our ship straight over the years. We have had just great employees that get the job done each and every day. It takes great leadership from the Board. It helps me just kind of work with all of our departments. But I truly appreciate all the efforts that our staff does each and every day to make our town great. And that's truly why I'm blessed to do my job each and every day. So I did not pay Bud for those comments, but I'm sure lunch will be in order soon. But I really appreciate all the kind words. I do. The only other thing that I wanted to mention tonight was that there is the small cell bill that Jason Zachary has been working on for us, got approved unanimously in the House floor today. So next up is the Senate, and hopefully that'll move along too. So good news on the legislative front there.
David, just so you, because I watched Richard Briggs' statement in the whatever Commerce Committee he was in, which it got approved, and basically they've combined two ones. They were going to do the TASER part of not having to report, but they also combined adding in the limitation of the size, and all of that is tied to federal law and not what the state had outlined originally.
Absolutely.
Because if you look in the caption, it doesn't say anything about that.
Right, I think they amended it. They put an amendment on the bill to make the bill,
Yeah.
and so that's exactly what they've done. So, and that's all I had. But again, I thank the Board very much.
Well, it's what we hope for with the small cell, so I think a lot of people in our town will be pleased to hear that. Okay, Tom, do you have anything else tonight?
We hadn't been sued lately, that's all I'll say.
Lately? Okay. That's,
Your signature, and I have no further report.
oh, yeah. I do need to sign that. Do we have any citizens signed up?
No, sir.
None, wow, okay, I'm surprised. Okay, the time is approximately, let's call this 7:39. Objection to March 10th, 2022, Farragut Board Mayor and Alderman meeting is now adjourned.